Look closely at this face. Before it was a symbol, before it was a headline, before it was a source of international debate, it was just a face. The face of a young girl, perhaps 16, maybe 17. Her eyes hold a light that hasn't yet learned the true nature of darkness. There's a ghost of a smile on her lips, a hint of a dream she was likely dreaming just before the shutter clicked. This photograph, faded and worn, is a ghost story. It's the beginning of a journey that would descend into the deepest circles of human suffering, and then, miraculously, ascend into one of the most courageous fights for justice the world has ever seen. This is not just a story about history. It's a story about a soul, a name, a life that was stolen, and the monumental struggle to reclaim it. This is the story of a comfort woman, a name so gentle, so deceptively soft, for a reality so brutal it defies language. And to understand her journey, we must first understand the world she was born into, a world that existed for a fleeting moment just before the fall. Imagine a small village nestled in the Korean countryside in the 1930s. The air is thick with the smell of damp earth after a spring rain and the sweet scent of acacia blossoms. The rhythm of life is dictated by the sun and the seasons. In this world, our girl lived. Her name wasn't Comfort Woman. It was Sunja or Kyunghee or Bukdong. She had a family, a mother whose hands were calloused from work, but whose touch was gentle. A father who smelled of the fields and whose quiet presence was a mountain of safety. She had siblings she fought with and protected with a fierce loyalty. Her world was small, but it was whole. Her dreams were simple yet profound. Perhaps she dreamed of a beautiful dress for a festival, or of catching the eye of a boy from a neighboring village. Perhaps she dreamed of learning to read more than just a few characters, of seeing a big city like Seoul. These were not the grand dreams of history books. They were the small, sacred dreams of a life yet to be lived. She was not a statistic. She was the scent of her mother's kimchi stew, the sound of her own laughter echoing in the yard, the feeling of cool river water on her feet on a hot summer day. She was a complete universe of hope and potential. And it was this universe that was targeted, fractured, and set on a course for annihilation. The shadows of war were stretching across Asia. The Japanese Empire, in its quest for expansion, needed more than soldiers and steel. It needed resources, labor, and something far more sinister. In villages like hers, strangers began to appear. They were Japanese officials, or sometimes Korean collaborators, dressed in crisp uniforms that seemed alien in the rustic landscape. They brought with them not weapons, but words. Words polished like jewels, full of dazzling promises. They spoke of jobs in factories in Japan. They spoke of earning good money, enough to send home to help her family, to buy medicine for her ailing grandmother, to ensure her younger siblings could eat well. They painted pictures of a modern world, of adventure, of contributing to a grand new order. To a poor family struggling under colonial rule, these words were a powerful temptation. To a young girl with a good heart and a desire to help, they sounded like a noble calling, a chance to be a dutiful daughter. The promise was a key, but it didn't open a door to a better life. It locked one behind her forever. For some, it wasn't a choice. It was a violent abduction, a canvas sack thrown over a head while walking home from the market. For others, it was coercion, a threat against their family. But for so many, it began with this calculated, venomous lie. The day she left, her mother might have packed a small bundle with her favorite rice cakes. Her father might have given a stern but loving warning to be careful. They watched her get into a truck, a tiny figure waving goodbye, disappearing down a dusty road. They believed she was going toward a future. They could never have imagined she was being driven toward the mouth of hell. The journey was a blur of confusion and growing dread. The truck gave way to a crowded train, the train to a suffocating ship. The farther she got from home, the more the beautiful promises began to rot, revealing the ugly truth beneath. The kind smiles of the recruiters vanished, replaced by the harsh commands of soldiers. The other girls on the ship were just like her, their faces etched with the same dawning horror. They were no longer in Korea. They were in Manchuria, in China, in the Philippines, in Singapore, in Burma, even on remote Pacific islands. They had arrived at their destination, a place the Japanese Imperial Army called an Ionjo, a comfort station. Here, her life as she knew it ended. Her name was taken from her. She was given a Japanese name, or more often, just a number. Number 73, number 114. She was no longer Sunja, the girl who loved the taste of persimmons. She was a number, an object, a piece of military equipment catalogued and deployed for the comfort of the emperor's soldiers. The comfort station itself was a crude structure, sometimes a converted barracks, a warehouse, or just a series of small, hastily built rooms. Her room was a tiny cubicle with a thin mattress on the floor. It was a cell, a cage. And here, the true nature of her job was revealed. She was to be a sexual slave for the Japanese military. The violence was systematic, relentless, and soul-crushing. Day after day, night after night, a long line of soldiers would form outside her door. Each one was an erasure. Each assault was a chipping away of her humanity. She learned to disconnect her mind from her body, to retreat to a small secret corner of her consciousness where she could still remember the scent of acacia blossoms in her village. Her body became a battlefield where a war was fought against her very soul. And her mind became the last sanctuary, the final fortress against utter annihilation. The system was designed for maximum efficiency and dehumanization. There were rules, schedules, medical checks that were just another form of violation. Disease was rampant. Malnutrition was a constant companion. The physical pain was immense, but it was the psychological torture that left the deepest, most permanent scars. She saw other girls die, from disease, from suicide, from the sheer brutality of it all. She saw girls who fought back, beaten into submission. Survival was a moment-by-moment calculation. A quiet act of defiance might be sharing a stolen piece of bread with another girl. A moment of connection might be a shared glance of understanding in the latrine line. These were tiny sparks of humanity in an ocean of institutionalized cruelty. She was a prisoner of war, but her war was undeclared, her wounds invisible to the outside world. She was trapped in a cycle of endless trauma, and time itself began to dissolve. Days bled into weeks, weeks into months, months into years. The girl in the photograph, the one with the light in her eyes, was buried under layers of pain, shame, and a silence so profound it was its own form of suffocation. She was one of an estimated 200,000 women and girls abducted from across the Asia-Pacific, forced into this state-sponsored sexual slavery. 200,000 universes of hope extinguished. Then, in August of 1945, the war ended. Bombs fell, an emperor spoke on the radio, and the world celebrated.